You are live. It's what it says on my screen, which is fantastic news. Welcome, everybody, to this Finance Indaba Network webinar made possible by Workday, one of our favorite partners. Good to have energy in the house, so welcome. And let's wait a couple minutes for people to join. All can join the link as you're used to via your email, and please also forward to your colleagues if you want them to join as well. Hi, Karen, good to see you. Karen is a firm supporter of our Workday sponsored webinar, so it's always great to have her on board as well. Let me just also put a message up for everyone to introduce themselves. I think we should choose our time wisely, and I'd like to just officially welcome everybody to the webinar Mastering Virtual Finance, How Aon aced financial close and audits with Workday. So we can see two gents from Aon on this slide, and what happened is at the Finance Indaba online event in October, we had these two amazing guys, Jeremy and Peter, from Aon, presenting such a compelling case study for virtual finance, like how to do audits, how to do financial close, how to go live with new systems in a modern way that works from home, that works from office, and especially in this incredibly difficult year, how to be successful in such a circumstance. We had a phenomenal response to that session. Lots of people joined, and Workday was our partner for that one. And I chatted to Zuko, and we said, and Zuko Mdwaba, the country managing director of Workday, is on this call, and I hope you know him already. But we said we must make this available to a wider audience. So here we are, backed by popular demand. We'll play some of those remarks of the Aon session, but we'll also go a little bit deeper as a sort of follow-up into that the power of virtual finance. So we've also got Faizan Siddiqui from Workday in the UK, an absolute expert in finance solutions. And this is really your chance to get that question in that you've been thinking of, like how does virtual finance work? Must we never see auditors again? What's a financial close like in the cloud? This is really the time to ask all those questions, and we promise we'll get to them during the session. So before we start listening to those Aon guys, I just want to start with you, Zuko. You've obviously also, as a cloud-based platform, you've also looked at what happened in 2020. What have been sort of your high-level takeaways about what you always say is the power of the cloud?
Thanks, Joel. Good afternoon, everyone. I think what you touched on, Joel, I think it's just important to also contextualize Aon as a customer, and I'll touch on that briefly. But as an organization, Workday, we have more than 3,300 customers globally, and almost a third of that is actually financial management customers. So we are an organization that believe in planning, executing, and analyzing in the same environment. So basically, all these customers that we have globally are all on the same version of Workday, regardless of whether they are on a financial management path or on a human capital management path or planning. So, or analytics for that matter. So one of the things that, one of the reasons why the number for financial management customers is slightly less than the human capital management customers globally is because, as you can appreciate, is that the financial management piece is, there was a lag between, in terms of organizations being comfortable going into the cloud. There was a delay around that because a lot of financial professionals were not comfortable back in the days around being in the cloud. In the recent past, we've seen a huge shift around this. I mean, we've had a huge growth on year around acquiring financial management customers. One of the things that we have noticed, certainly during this difficult time, is, in fact, we didn't only notice its feedback that we've gotten from our customers globally, and Aon being one of them, is that thanks to the cloud, they were able to continue as per normal, as if nothing happened. So they were, as you'll hear from the customer story that will be shared shortly, they were able to continue from remotely, basically, not stopping. There was business continuity from where they left off when they were able to be in the office. And one of the reasons I think Joel touched on auditors is within Workday, every single thing that happens within Workday is audit is always on. So I think one of the biggest benefits is that from an audit point of view, it creates more flexibility around an audit trade because everything is there. I mean, there's anecdotes that we could share around CFOs and FD and financial professionals where they've had auditors in-house and they asked auditors, traditionally auditors would be there for a couple of weeks and be at your premises, and they were told that, okay, have a cup of coffee, I'll put together some reports. And this is something that's unheard of in the audit space, which is a huge shift. Maybe from a South African context, it's something that's quite important. We've had presence in South Africa for about 3 years now. We have in South Africa about 10 customers that are in human capital management currently in the 3 years that we've had presence here. We have one that's currently a financial management customer in South Africa. However, in the bigger context, there's companies like Aon who have presence in South Africa. We've got about 300 subsidiaries of global entities that have got presence in South Africa, the likes of Aon, Unilever, and a number of other companies. So Aon are running both financial management and human capital management. Basically, they are running their business on Workday. And one of the things that maybe is worth mentioning around Aon, this is an organization that's got more than 50,000 employees worldwide. And one of the reasons why they decided to partner with Workday was because they've grown as an organization over the past couple of years through acquisition. There were a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and Workday was the perfect solution for them. When they went to market, they were able to align with Workday in terms of helping them through their business plan and ensuring that mergers and acquisitions are something that are pretty straightforward in running their business. I will leave the rest in terms of business continuity to the by popular demand video that Joel will play. It's pretty impressive. We had huge demand in terms of replaying it and creating and getting a bigger audience because we felt that it's a good story to share. So I'm looking forward to that again. Without further ado, unless there's anything that you'd like to know from me, I'm here the entire webinar. I will hand over back to Joel.
Yeah, great, Zuko, and thanks. Let's get back to you towards the end of the webinar, and where you can explain how your one South African customer is going to 5 and 10 in the next year or so. But Faizan, we've got you on board, which is great. Really an expert when it comes to these finance solutions. And not unknown in South Africa. He's been known to come to South Africa to support the team here at Workday. So Faizan, what have you seen talking to CFOs in terms of their main challenges, and how do you feel they have experienced this year?
Of course. Joel, thank you so much for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Faizan Siddiqui, as Joel has introduced me. I'm the pre-sales leader for South Africa here at Workday. I've spent best part of 15 years in the solutions space and having had numerous conversations with the CFO and their teams. Now more than ever, finance is truly looking to transform. So what I'll do is I'll spend the next few minutes just highlighting some of the key things that I'm seeing when I'm talking to the various finance leaders across not just South Africa, but also across Europe as well. The Office of the CFO is an integral part to every business, and there's no disputing that. The teams themselves are looking to transition from just transaction processing to a much more of an analytics-focused part of the business. They want to realize the potential of their role and their highly talented team members, so rather than just doing the rudimentary tasks day in, day out. The story, however, is not too dissimilar to what you may already be familiar with. Challenges range across the macro environment, have become even more pronounced this year. Many businesses have had to shift their focus to survival, as opposed to perhaps plans and projects they might have had on their books. In the same breath, many businesses are seeing this as an opportunity to diversify, and as Zuka said, focus on the M&A type of activities to give them that competitive advantage as they come out of this challenging time. However, the fact remains that they need robust finance systems to help catalyze this vision. The finance system simply can no longer be ones where it takes the team weeks to perform period close processes and wait for period close to happen for your consolidated reporting. Neither do they, or systems where you have to wait till the following day to even analyze information. That's a day too late. Nor can they, or should the FP&A team, for instance, perform their planning, budgeting, and forecasting in silos with limited and stale information. The Office of the CFO is aspiring to be able to plan, execute, analyze in the same system, exactly what Zuko said earlier. They are looking to invest in a partner that will enable them for today and for the future. The constraint in a number of cases, though, is not the desire or capabilities of these teams, but often it's the legacy ERP systems that they need to use. It is paramount to be thinking to leverage innovative and agile platforms that will give you speed of thought, insights, efficiency, and agility to enable your business to thrive. Too often, I find that finance systems have been either too slow to adapt to changing business requirements. The Office of the CFO, however, is now more than ever looking to accelerate their digitization agenda. And that is one of the top things that CFOs have on their list of perhaps what's even keeping them up at night. They are looking for technologies that can equip them to drive better business outcomes. They want to be able to automate familiar and repetitive tasks by leveraging latest technologies like AI, for instance, in their finance systems. As Robin Sisko, our own president and CFO, says herself through her conversations with her peers, now more than ever, agile systems that support people and help us plan for what's to come matter. Another key aspect of consideration by CFOs is risk. We can never not have risk in a conversation with a CFO. This could be risk of doing nothing, while at the other end of the spectrum, how do you manage risk of change? A lot of CFOs sometimes can be quite risk averse. When embarking on the journey to invest in latest technologies, CFOs need to ensure that they are mitigating risk while being able to deliver their finance transformation project on time and on budget. They're very keen to partner with a vendor that has a proven track record of delivering such projects and being the least risky solution. Lastly, the final point I would like to make is CFOs are looking for a long-term relationship with a strategic partner. The current circumstances surrounding us have laid testament to the fact that the Office of the CFO and the finance system of record is a mission-critical function for your business. CFOs want to engage in long-term relationships as opposed to just short-term gains only. They want to be engaging with a team that genuinely cares for their satisfaction from their finance systems and can support their business through the normal days as well as tumultuous days that can come about. It is of paramount importance that the function of the finance team remains consistent and undisrupted to ensure the flow of capital, be it ensure revenue bookings, payment of employee salaries, as well as being able to meet your statutory reporting obligations as a business. With that, Joel, I'll hand it back over to you. Hopefully that's given everyone some food for thought.
Thanks so much, Faizan, and thanks to the both of you. Definitely some food for thought, and we can get back to it after that. As Suko said, we're super keen to bring that case study from Aon to you again. So the two gents you'll be hearing from, the one is Peter Riccio. We'll hear from him from the towards the end, and he's really practical when it comes to implementation of some of the virtual finance solutions. And we'll be starting to hear from a gentleman called Jeremy Dogodowski. He introduces himself really quickly when this segment starts. That I'll start just now. So that's why I've given you his name, because he goes over it a little bit quickly. But it's a really awesome session. So we'll see Faizan and Zuko back in a bit. And please keep your questions coming in the chat in the meantime. We're here to get them answered.
I'm a finance director at Aon. I'm based, as you said, out of Chicago, but I was in South Africa implementing Workday a couple of years ago. So it's going to be a good segue when I pass it on to Peter, because I believe Peter's going to talk through how to work in a virtual environment and close the financials. But I believe the building blocks were started a couple of years ago when Aon implemented Workday. And let me move to my next slide. So really the question was, a couple of years ago, why did Aon implement Workday in South Africa and a lot of other countries? Really the main reason was we were using an aging Peoplesoft platform. So I know before I helped implement Workday systems at Aon, I used to work in FPA, and I'll be honest, the Peoplesoft platform was on its last legs. It was very old, very archaic, and it wasn't cloud-based. So it was good for its time, but it basically needed to be put out to pasture. So again, if you can see down in the screen or the slide, Aon started implementing Workday financials in 2016 with really, phase one was really around the Nordic countries, so Netherlands, Denmark, etc. Phase two was was around some of the larger countries, North America and US and Canada. And then phase 3 was South Africa and a lot of other countries. So from a South Africa Aon perspective, it was the right thing to do because just like other countries before, it was using an aging Peoplesoft platform. And we had a lot of success implementing Workday financials in other countries, as I mentioned in phase 1 and phase 2. Really what excited Aon about Workday was that, like I said, it was cloud-based and it was a fully integrated platform, meaning, as I'll show you guys in a couple of slides, all the different financial platforms or financial processes were in one platform, whereas our previous environment that was Peoplesoft, it was really disparate in terms of certain things were on Peoplesoft, certain other financial processes were on other systems. There were just a lot of touch points and it was very manual. Also, the one issue we had with Peoplesoft was because it wasn't cloud-based, we really weren't getting automatic upgrades or automatic new releases or new features timely. So it was very difficult for management to continue to justify spending money on new Peoplesoft platforms when we could move on to the cloud-based Workday. And then I know Peter will tell me this slide is old because it only goes to phase 4. I'm sure Peter's slides will show you that we're actually at phase 5 now from an Aon perspective. Again, I apologize, this is a busy slide, but really what I'm trying to show you guys here is, if you guys ask me what is in the Workday financial scope, there were a lot of items in the scope. So really, I'll start from top and I'll go around counterclockwise. So what was in scope was banking and settlements. So what it means is paying the actual suppliers through a banking system and settling through the system. So I know at Aon, we use the Workday system plus Wall Street to bank and settle. Then moving counterclockwise to the left, something that was very important was we implemented financial accounting. So really the pain points previously were in financial accounting, things like journal entries intercompany were all done manually. So for example, in South Africa and other countries, a financial analyst or a financial accountant would actually, what they would do is they would actually post an entry in the Peoplesoft system, but a lot of the actual approvals and reviews were done manually on a piece of paper, literally signing a piece of paper. So what Workday came and did was it allowed us to go and have an automated workflow in the Workday system. And so a simple thing like that was very important because it cut down on a lot of the non-value added activities. Also, same thing in intercompany. Previously, intercompany would go through I would say, a mechanized database, but it was still a very painful database to go through, both on the initiator and then the receiver side. So what Workday did was it brought that whole intercompany flow, data flow, into a system. So you had the initiator and the approver the receiver. It was all in one system, and you could see the workflow as well in the Workday system. Again, expenses was another pain point. I know in South Africa, and from my personal experience at Aon, before Workday, what you literally had to do for expenses would be is you'd scrounge up all the physical receipts, you then go fax them off to a shared service in India, and then you'd sit around for a couple of weeks hoping that India approved your expenses and you got paid for the expenses that you incurred on behalf of Aon. So what Workday did was, the expenses, you would scan in the expenses either through your PC or your mobile device. You would, once you submitted it, all the approvers and reviews were done online, and you would see literally the approval within a couple weeks at most, usually a week or a couple weeks, depending on the payment cycle. So it went from an operation that took maybe two weeks to a month or more to 2 weeks or less. So I know for a lot of folks and a lot of users, it was just cutting down a lot of just the administrative time that it took to go through the expenses. From a business assets perspective, again, the same theme here is in terms of assets. Previously, the assets were done in a disparate, separate system. What Workday allowed us to do was put it into one system, Workday, and also it allowed us to feed into our shared service that was done in Krakow, Poland, that really managed the assets. But again, it's the same theme here, whereas it allowed us to get all these different financial processes and transactions into one system. Supplier account was a little bit different. So at Aon, supplier accounts, Aon uses something called Coupa for supplier accounts, so it's outside of Workday. But since this was phase 3, they pretty much had some really good integrations or touch points between Coupa and Workday. And so what would happen on the supplier account side would be previously in South Africa and other countries, you'd raise purchase orders and the invoices would come from the suppliers offline or in different systems. So what happened in South Africa and other countries when implemented Workday was the purchase orders and the invoices would come through to Coupa. It would integrate to Workday to then go settle those invoices and then to feed into the banking and settlement module within Workday. So again, although supplier accounts was in Coupa a separate system, there were really good integrations to Workday to allow a seamless approach from a settlement perspective on POs and invoices of those suppliers. The other two modules here, projects and customer accounts, to be honest, they weren't really implemented at South Africa and the reason being is because projects is more around businesses that have consultants or actuarials, and South Africa didn't have a presence in terms of the retirement or a business in Aon that had actuarials or consultants. And same with customer accounts. So it was decided in South Africa that we would use our current brokerage systems. South Africa had mostly insurance and some reinsurance in terms of the Aon business. And there, the decision was made is not to use the Workday customer accounts module. It was more to use the existing brokerage systems to cover that. And then time tracking you see is outside of the core. Again, same thing here is it really wasn't implemented in South Africa because, as I mentioned, South Africa didn't have actuarial or consultant-based business. So projects and time tracking wasn't used. So I'm going to move on to the next slide here. So what was the actual approach that was used? So something I don't have on my slide that I do want to mention is that the way South Africa really implemented Workday was it followed the standard Aon approach, which is really plan, architect, configure, test, and then deploy. So again, a lot there, but really the theme there was get your stakeholders, which we in South Africa primarily dealt with the controllership and the FP&A group. Get your stakeholders involved early in terms of planning, and then bring them in through the architecture, the configuration, and then the other thing that the actual theme was test as much as you can as early as you can. So like I said, what we basically did with the South Africa team was we presented them the basic Workday solution, and then as we got more into the details, we actually went through and understood what would work from a vanilla perspective, a Workday implementation, and where they needed customization. But you'll see in the next slide, we tried to avoid customization as much as possible because we wanted to use off-the-shelf Workday product where we could. But in terms of the approach, something, as I said, that we tried to employ was use global frameworks where possible. Because again, what we learned from our previous implementations of PeopleSoft and other tools is the minute you customize, the minute you try to customize any and everything, it just falls apart. Because if you don't have global frameworks, you don't have global standards. If every country does things differently, it just the standard tool falls apart. And then when you try to upgrade or try to make changes, it becomes extremely difficult to do that. And so, like I said, we try to stay with the global framework. So if you see on the left-hand side of this slide, we try to stay with the global chart of accounts, global spend and revenue categories in Coupa and in Workday, standard hierarchies. Because I'm sure, as you guys know, in most companies, you have thousands and thousands of cost centers, lines of business, companies, etc. So where possible, you want to keep those as standard as you can. The other critical thing that we did was we kept with standard roles in Workday. Again, based on the phase 1 that was done a couple of years ago, there were standard roles in Workday around financial accountants, financial approvers, financial managers, etc., etc. So we tried to, for each country that we deployed Workday in, we try to keep these consistent across the different countries in terms of roles. That really drove, the reason we did that was very beneficial from a security perspective, because you would say a financial accountant in South Africa has the same security, same responsibilities within the system as a financial accountant in US and Canada, etc. And same with standardized processes. We try to keep as much as possible processes standard across the different countries that we implemented across the phases. Having said that, there were some things that we needed to customize or localize. South Africa language, there wasn't an issue because in South Africa it's primarily English is the language. Although I know the South African team told me the Americanized version doesn't cut it in South Africa because there were different spellings and different terms that were used. So we did use the South African English language for the Workday tool. There were some different tax rules in obviously South Africa than the US and the VAT that was used in Europe. So I know we spent a lot of time with the tax teams, making sure that we had the proper tax rules and configurations loaded into the Workday side. The other thing we spent some time with the local South African team was country level thresholds for business processes. So I know in South Africa, things were more tightly controlled than other countries in the Nordics or the US or Canada. So we spent quite a bit of time on the expense side loading in certain thresholds for the South African model. And then same thing on reports. So I know in South Africa, there was BEE reporting that was required. And so we spent some time configuring and pulling together BEE reporting for the local South African team. Sorry guys, I know I'm talking here a lot, but I think the most important slide that I've got in my deck is what were the observations, what were the takeaways from the South African implementation? And so really, from my perspective, the implementer, three things that really stuck out to me. One was focus on the user. And so really, it's great to have a solution of a Workday solution and to say, hey, here, look, we're going to implement it. But as I said, really the key was listen to the user and understand what they're looking for. And I know we had a lot of great support from the controllership team, as I mentioned, the finance team for South Africa, because one thing that we've experienced before is if you don't involve the user, you don't listen to the user, the local teams say, this is great, but we like our current system, we're not going to implement, or they're going to resist the implementation. So one thing we were careful from the beginning, from the onset to do is really involve the user and the stakeholders in South Africa, as I said, controllership and the leaders. And so it was a very good implementation from my perspective because, like I said, we focused on the user from the beginning, and we really got buy-in from the finance leadership from the get-go. The other thing to do is identify requirement gaps early in the implementation, because one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to say, hey, I've got this great Workday solution, here you go, and the users will come back and say, well, what about this? What about all these different gaps? So what we were able to do well was to identify the gaps early in the implementation timeline, and then work to close those gaps sooner rather than later before we went live in a year. The other thing that was very much important from our end, from the implementers, is don't overlook the importance of change management. So in terms of training, communication, et cetera. So as I said, it's one thing to have a great system and implement it, but if nobody is communicated that system and there's not proper training that's given, it will fail no matter how good your system is. So something that we learned from our earlier phases is get out early in terms of training, in terms of communication. So we would send out regular communications even before implementation saying, hey, look, this is what we're going to implement. This is when it's going to happen. Please provide us any concerns or issues. And then we got ahead of the curve in terms of the training, meaning we had training before the actual system went live. And so there we were able to adequately and properly provide the users with what they needed to successfully transition into the Workday platform. So I would say from a country perspective, when we got feedback after the system went live in South Africa, something that we heard positive from the South African team was it was basic things that Workday allowed the teams to do. It was really what Workday allowed the teams to do was mechanize the financial processes for the local teams. And as I mentioned to you guys before, basic things like journal entries, putting into a system, avoiding having all the different paper, things like I mentioned to you guys around expenses, basic things where before it was taking, submitting, faxing, collating all this paper, just streamlining those processes, putting into a system, having all these workflows, reviews, approvals, all these things in a system. Really what that meant for the local team was it really avoided them having to do all these manual tasks, so they could then focus on value-added tasks. How do I support my business? How do I ensure my my financial process is properly controlled. So really avoiding or really removing or minimizing these manual non-value-added tasks to go more for the local teams to go really focus on value-added tasks. And then the other thing that the takeaway that we heard back from the South African Aon team was what it started to do, other than just avoiding these manual non-value-added tasks, is it actually provided them insight into some of their financial activities. And examples that we heard back from the team was, one thing that when we implemented Workday was, the one thing that the power of Workday gives the user of the system is the ability to really drill through the source transactions. So meaning, I'll give you an example. During close, an FP&A analyst at South Africa, they could look at their variance actual versus budget. They could then say, hey, why are my actuals higher than my budget or forecast? What Workday allowed them to do was they could then go into their actuals, drill down to see why, down to the transactional level, to see what was driving the increase in expense or whatever they were looking at. So that was very valuable. They could actually drill down all the way down to their source transactions within the Workday system. Or if they were going into procurement, it would allow them to go into the specific PO into the Coupa system that was outside of the Workday. So the local team found that very valuable. Whereas before the Workday implementation, the way they would have to do that they would have to go on to Peoplesoft, they would have to go into the detailed transactions manually, and it would just take them longer than they would like, and especially when they were in the close and they didn't, and time was of the essence. The other thing Workday provided them was something called month-end close dashboards. So the controller of South Africa and the controllership team would get these closed dashboards that were automatically populated or created in Workday. And what it would show them would be, it would show them the journal entry status. It would show them which journal entries were pending, which journal entries were approved, and which journal entries were posted. And so that was very valuable for the controllership team to understand if the close was complete. And as you guys probably can imagine, during month-end close, it's a very short 3 to 5 day window where finance really has to understand whether the financials are complete to sign off on the books for that month or that quarter. So the dashboard in Workday provided a quick snapshot for controllership to look to say how many entries were the entries, what process or what status were they, which were approved, which were posted, which were still pending, and then they could get their local team to go chase those entries where needed. It also, after a few months using the Workday system, the month-end close dashboards provided them trends, which were very good to help them quickly understand if the financials were complete. The other thing that helped the local team was something called expense travel dashboards. So obviously, expense and travel is a very discretionary spend, and it's looked at very closely by the South African and other Aon teams. So something that helped the team really review the expense and travel was these dashboards. So again, same thing with as the month-end close dashboards. It provided them trending after a couple months, and also provided them specifics around who was incurring the expense, what types of expenses were being incurred, and then they could go drill into the Workday system to understand more around those expenses. So again, it's really the last 15 minutes I really talked to you guys about the journey that South Africa and Aon in general experienced using Workday. So most experiences that the Aon and the South Africa team were that experienced with implementing Workday were positive. Again, with any system, there were challenges implementing a system because we all know that change is not always easy. But for the most part, as I mentioned, simple things that the team couldn't do previously, these non-value-added tasks that they could do, and then they started to do these more insightful activities around dashboards. And so unless there's questions, I'll pass it on to Peter, because I know, like I said, this is the journey that got South Africa onto a cloud mechanized system. And I know Peter will talk through more around now that South Africa and other countries around Aon went to this cloud-based Workday platform, it allowed them to close during this COVID difficult time. So Peter, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Let me just share my screen with everyone.
All right, I've stopped sharing, hopefully.
Thanks, Jeremy. All right, please let me know, everyone, if you can see my screen.
You can see it? Perfect.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. So hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. It's really exciting to share the story that we as Aon have gone through with all of you. So it's a pleasure to be here. As Joel said in the beginning, my name is Peter Riccio. I've been living the Aon Workday journey for 8 years now, starting implementing with HR, so the core HCM Workday suite, and then moving on to financials and then PSA for the past 5 years. So it's been a long but fantastic journey. Yeah, solving for virtual close. How do we do that, right? It's the global pandemic, the way we change, the way we operate, the way we do business. It all has changed due to the situation we're in this year. So everyone's kind of asking themselves the question of, how do we continue to do what we do and still do it effectively, right? And it's really a tough question that people, companies have been asking themselves, because it's not that easy once you start looking at it. How do you move, for example, in Aon's case, where 50,000 employees, how do you suddenly have those employees work from home and stop going to the office? How do you function? How do you perform your day-to-day tasks? So as Aon, we ourselves decided to kind of cut back office attendance in March, move all our colleagues to remote working. But in order to do that, we had to take some key steps to make sure that we could close effectively and process our financials. And these are the key steps we took right here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a mistake. The slide is blank for a reason, because we didn't have to do anything. We simply stopped one day, worked from home the next day, like nothing ever happened in terms of the way we operate. It was that easy. We didn't have to do anything different. We could safely tell our colleagues to stay home, to not go out, and continue their daily tasks just as if they were in the office. And all that thanks to leveraging Workday's cloud platform. So as Jeremy said, it was a long journey for Aon, right? We were living in a paper world, running around the office, getting signatures, printing, faxing. It was a paper world, but with Workday, we moved to the cloud, to a paperless world, really. There was no invoices to grab from someone's desk. We didn't have to worry that there was a whole bunch of binders full of invoices for the past year, or expenses or receipts or any other claims. Everything that we needed was right there in our browser, right? All we had to do is open up our laptop, open up a browser, and log into Workday on the cloud. Everything was there. All our bank statements, all our transactions, journals, expenses, invoices, everything. There was nothing from a physical perspective to worry about. All colleagues needed to continue and to function was just their laptops. Everything was in the system right there, for us. So really, with that in mind, it wasn't even a very difficult decision for us to make, sending our colleagues home, because we knew we could operate effectively and actually even better, reducing time for colleagues to get to the office, making sure they stayed safe. We knew we could function better in this new environment than we could, risking going into the office, etc. So we really had everything we needed right in front of us. And with that, and with Workday and its cloud-based system, there were no delays, due to moving to the virtual workplace. We closed on time, not a single delay, not even really a hiccup. It was like nothing had happened in terms of our work, our day-to-day work. There was uninterrupted access to the system. Again, there's nothing for us to worry about. Everything's in the cloud. All our transactions, all our data is there. No one's worrying that they left an invoice or something in the office and they have to go get it. Everything is there in the system. So we're fully transactional in the cloud. There's no need for paperwork. There's no need for internal maintenance of servers, data warehouses, etc. That's not handled by us, the client. That's all handled by Workday, right? So for us, we don't have to worry about, do we have to keep an IT team on site in some of our offices, to deal with server issues. There's no, system installations to worry about, right? All a user needs is to be provisioned an account, a password, and then they could log on, connecting through the Aon network, through their browser into the system. So all that worry that you have, when you're tied to something physical, all that really, just disappears for us in the cloud. And it really, really helped us just function normally as we would day to day. And I think that's a very important, takeaway here is, I think until this year, really, I don't think we at Aon, and I'm pretty sure many people around the world, I don't think we realize the true potential of the cloud. I mean, we use it, in our day-to-day lives, family photo sharing, video game saves, documents. But in the workplace, even at Aon, we were always aware of, Workday being in the cloud, but we didn't really see its true potential until we actually needed it, until, the situation of the pandemic put us, in a place where we had to realize, oh, wait, well, we're fine because we exist in the cloud, and everyone can work from home the very next day, and there's no impacts to our business, to our operations. And that's, that level of comfort, especially, if we're talking about, Aon CEO or, people making these critical decisions about keeping their employees safe, that level of comfort, knowing that they don't have to think about the day-to-day processing, the financials, the transactions, because that's all, taken care of by the fact that we, went through this journey to move into a cloud-based system. That level of comfort is really, really something that's, especially when we see things like this happen in the world, it's just fantastic to have, and it just makes things so much easier. So yeah, really, I mean, that's for the close. When we look at it, honestly, there's not a thing we had to do differently, which really, really says a lot about Workday and the way Aon has changed, right? If you listen to Jeremy's presentation at the beginning, he described, what our day-to-day financials would look like in the Peoplesoft world, where we'd be running around with paper, to now when we're just in the cloud and all the transactions are there. It was just really, really easy for us to, continue operating as we would normally from an office. But you might ask yourself now, okay, so your day-to-day operations, continue because you guys already made this journey, you already put this work into moving to Workday, to the cloud. What about those people who haven't done that yet? Well, as Jeremy mentioned in the outline on the Workday roadmap for Aon, we're not done yet. We are still on the Workday journey. We function in over 60 countries, and we aim to deploy in all of them where we can. So we are still on that Workday journey throughout 2020. And this year, in February and March, when we were facing, the beginning of this pandemic and what I feel was the most, uncertainty in the way things are going to go, we actually began our phase 5 of the financials implementation, deploying to 8 countries across EMEA and Asia Pacific. And we've been doing that fully remote, with fully remote sessions, with fully remote testing, with fully remote end user training. All the configuration we're doing is remote. We have Aon and Workday teams spread across the US, EMEA, APAC, all working, from home, and everything we're doing is fully remote. And that's the beauty of Workday and the cloud is, we're not worried about installations. We're not worried about buying servers for our offices to, host the application. All that is done for us by Workday. And all we need is a laptop and a browser to access the system. So that really, really takes a lot of strain, a lot of pressure, especially now, when we kind of live in uncertain times of when everything will go back to normal, of going back to the office, of traveling. We traveled heavily. I used to be away probably, in a given year, I would be traveling for half the year. So half the year I would spend, in hotels away from home and traveling to different offices. And I miss that very much because I loved to travel and get to see different places. But we see that if we have to stop that, it's not necessary. We can continue deploying fully remotely. And we couldn't do that with a different system that's not in the cloud, right? That would just be physically impossible, right? But now with the cloud and everything being done remotely, virtually, it's just quite simple, really. The only change is that we spend less time traveling and we can be more time at home with our families, and so that's good for everyone, really. But not only did we start our phase 5 of our financials implementation this year, we also fully completed a phase 4 rollout of Workday's professional services automation suite, what we call PSA, that handles projects, contracts, billing, AR, time tracking. We fully ran that program remote this year, deploying, as you can see in my scope summary, it's quite a large portion of our business. Over 3,000 customers, 3,000 projects, 2,000 contracts. We provisioned over 600 new time entry users from our revenue business. And we did that fully remote. Again, all the sessions, all the testing, all the end user training was done fully remotely. And again, we could not do that unless we were in the cloud. All we had to do, was provision user accounts, give users a password and have them log into the system. And then of course, all training had to move virtually. So perhaps, it took us maybe a little bit longer than organizing in-room sessions, but it wasn't any less effective. There was no delay in the project. We still went live as we expected. There weren't really issues to overcome due to not being able to travel or be there physically on site. Honestly, it just meant more, calendar juggling for people to connect across the different time zones. But other than that, there was nothing that stood in our way to suddenly cease from, on-site implementations to completely virtual implementations. And again, I'll probably say it for the 5th or 10th time now, it's all thanks to Workday being in the cloud and really giving us, this ability to truly be virtual and truly be disconnected from all the paperwork that, sometimes you deal with in offices. Now, everything's paperless. All our approvals are within the system. We're not sending anything to sign to anyone. We're not waiting for any signatures. Everything is in the system. All the approvals, all the evidence, everything, statements, bank statements, expenses. Jeremy mentioned, that move to, automated mechanized expense system tool was fantastic. Especially it used to be a big headache for me in our Peoplesoft days traveling. I'd kind of cut big stacks of all my, receipts. Sometimes if I'd be away for a month, obviously I'd lose something here and there, and it was just collecting a big binder and making sure I brought it in, and then spend an hour scanning it, sending it off, and then waiting weeks for it to get paid. And, you know, now all I do is on my phone, I take a picture of my receipt. I throw the receipt away because I don't need it anymore because it's in the system. So, you know, this really has helped us function. Also, you know, audits. We are going through a virtual audit of our PSA program right now. And it's really, really unchanged from our past audits in the past years with Workday, because Workday has a built-in auditing report within the system. So our auditors don't need to see, you know, anything physical. We get on a call with them and we bring up the Workday audit system report, and they can see who processed what transaction, when, from what account, you know, who was looking at this, who approved this invoice, where did this come from? Everything we can drill down right in the system. You know, we don't need to be collecting signatures or any other documentation for audit, because everything we need to show them, everything they want to see and need to see is right there in the system all the time, available whenever we need it.
Fantastic endorsement, I think, Zuko and Faizan, and sort of a very sort of practical way that that Peter and Jeremy sort of ran through the, dare I say, blessings of being on a system that works in a time like this. Yeah, maybe Faizan, I think the chat's been fairly quiet, but people have been glued to the screen because I can see the same group that sort of started watching the Aon guys are still with us. So I think it's quite telling in terms of the impact of their story. Maybe Faizan, if you just want to sort of add on and talk about a few other of the multinational clients, obviously maybe in your space in Europe. I know that there's been one or two massive ones that have even gone live during COVID-19. So, and maybe also from your side, Faizan, what stood out when you were listening to the Aon guys? And I've got the same question for Zuko after that.
Absolutely. So the first and foremost thing that absolutely stands out is that irrespective of the disruption caused to all our lives because of the global pandemic, for them to run their business effectively and efficiently, they did not have to do anything. I mean, that is a massive testament to the solution that underpins their business. And when I said earlier about Workday being mission critical, can you imagine if the finance system was inaccessible for even a day or at month end? You know, what impact that would have on your team, on your business as a whole. So for me, that's so important, you know, and it goes back to the analogy of how we built Workday from the ground up with a clean sheet of paper. You know, why can't your finance system of record be akin to your applications and tools you use in your personal lives? You know, they don't go down, they're available whenever you need them. You can interact with them, whether you're on a mobile device or on a laptop or in the office or at home. So it's that same methodology which absolutely resonates that, you know, why can't finance teams come into the 21st century and get this level of service from their finance systems? When I talked to the CFOs who recently selected Workday and went live, you know, even during the pandemic, a bit akin to the Aon story, you know, you can deploy Workday when you're 100% remote, when you're virtual, when your teams, you know, and the only thing, as Peter was saying, that he had to worry about was the diaries of people in different time zones, you know, and that for me is a wow moment. It's like, you know, you're not tethered to your office or to have to come in, fly people, your carbon footprint, the cost to be able to deliver a project. So yes, you absolutely with Workday can go live even in these trying circumstances today.
Yeah. Maybe just to add to that, Joel. By the way, I mean, I always mention this, that I just absolutely love listening to customer stories, because there is no better sense that anyone will get about Workday other than listening to a customer talking passionately about the partnership that they have with Workday. What really stood out for me is what Faizan alluded to, not only business continuity in terms of the company running its business at month end or on a weekly basis, but it's also the Aon guys mentioned that they were busy with phase 5 at the time, and they continued delivering the projects during lockdown. I mean, just to contextualize it, Aon is one of almost 200 customers that went live with Workday over the past 6 months during lockdown. And this includes the likes of Walmart with almost 2 million employees, Shell, and a number of other customers globally. So to Faizan's point around developing or building Workday on a clean piece of paper, the architectural decisions that were made 15 years ago, they are really paying dividends today in terms of even before pre-COVID. I mean, we were able to deliver projects, 80+% of the projects remotely. So for us, it was a natural progression, just to up our game. We've been able to deliver more than almost 200 go lives in this period, which is phenomenal.
Thank you. And I think, Suko, we spoke about Workday initially being seen as mostly strong in the HR space, and I think we've seen it globally and in the US. Workday growing really fast, and now sort of that second wave coming of adoption in the finance space, and obviously that's why the guys are listening on this webinar as part of the Finance Endowment Network. I think there's probably a growing interest in that move here in South Africa as well. So maybe just your ambitions for South Africa. So in the last couple of minutes of this webinar.
I think it's a matter of time that we have financial management prospects or customers or future customers that will be in line with the HCM adoption that we've been getting. We're starting to see that there are a lot of conversation. Almost every second conversation that we're having is a financial management conversation. And keep in mind that a big part of that is planning. So planning from a financial management perspective or planning from a workforce management perspective. So this is something that is happening. In fact, COVID might be a huge catalyst around that. To Jeremy and Peter's point that they made in terms of business continuity, I think it will be a huge catalyst moving into the cloud for finance.
Sure, I think that trend is already happening in your area, Faizan, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. Just like Zuko said, there were businesses who went on the journey with HR and before that with CRM. And now what we are seeing as Workday is that we are trending in the very same manner where finance and the office of the CFO is putting their reliance in cloud vendors like Workday to take that pressure off of their own shoulders. We are the experts when it comes to finance. So, leverage Workday for what we're good at, and while you can focus on running your business, you don't have to worry about the heavy lifting of finance or HR. And yes, absolutely. So many customers are now going with cloud first. So it's not about on-premise anymore.
Well, thanks to you, Faizan, and thanks to you, Zuko, and thanks to everyone for joining. I think it's been really informative, and obviously it was a little bit more sort of product focused this time compared to some of the other webinars we do, but I think super helpful, and also something I would be the first to put my hand up for to do, considering the support that Workday has given Finance Endowment Network, the HR Endowment Network, our CFO and the CHRO community. So really appreciate that, Zuko, and looking forward to further collaboration in 2021. This is where we were, and I always like to just sort of point to the other webinars that are coming up under the same banner. So later this week, in fact tomorrow, we're going to talk about back office transformation with solid growth. Then another 2 days later, we've got the ultimate automation case study with our friend from Treasury One. And I think there's one more that's going to be next week, masterclass in asset-based finance. And I'm actually talking to Shane a little bit later today. It's going to be a good one as well. So once again, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Zuko and Faizan for helping us out, and thanks for Workday for your support.
Joel, it would be amiss of me not to just wish all the best to the CFO folks, to the finance folks for the awards on Wednesday this week. So all the best. And if we don't get to speak, let's all be safe. Thank you.
Absolutely. CFO awards on Wednesday in a super safe fashion. So keep an eye on CFO today, and you'll know who's the best CFO in the country. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.